And I wrote this book because I feel like the Syrian crisis has been going on for 12 years now, and there's no political resolution in sight. And there's more than 6 million Syrian refugees scattered throughout the world. And with no political resolution in sight, I just don't see how these people get to go back home, which I know most of them want to just go back home.
Hello and welcome to everyone. And this is episode 27 of Nour Akhras series. And today I have with me Nour Akhras. And I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Is it Nour Akhras?
Yes, yes, that's right.
Okay, that's right. So I have the honor to introduce Nour. She's a Syrian-American pediatric infectious diseases physician and pediatric hospitalist who has traveled across the world to provide healthcare to children in disaster regions. She's based in Chicago and she's a mother to 4 children. She loves to travel, read, swim in her free times, and just one is her debut book. It's a memoir, and that's why we are here to discuss about her book. And welcome, Nour.
Thank you so much, Sana. Thanks for having me.
And can you tell us more about yourself? Like, I really gave a short introduction, so I left more work for you to tell us more about yourself, your life in general.
So I'm Syrian-American, like you said. I was actually born in Syria, and my family moved here when I was 4 years old. And I grew up in the United States in pre 9/11, and I was a medical student when 9/11 hit. And so then I, obviously saw how the world changed after 9/11, especially how attitudes changed towards Muslims. And then how attitudes changed again, or maybe were more exacerbated or more out in the public after President Trump was elected and during his election season. I also have traveled across the world to serve Syrian refugees in Turkey and Greece, and then also on a medical mission to Yemen in the height of the war in Yemen. And I wrote this book because I feel like the Syrian crisis has been going on for 12 years now, and there's no political resolution in sight. And there's more than 6 million Syrian refugees scattered throughout the world. And with no political resolution in sight, I just don't see how these people get to go back home, which I know most of them want to just go back home.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, when did you were a doctor, right? And I saw that since the beginning, it was like a family of doctors, and then you grew up to be a doctor. And then how did the idea of the book came?
The idea of the book came in 2019. So in 2018, I had my youngest child, and I traveled to California to visit a friend soon after I had him, like a few months after I had him. I took him with me, and she introduced me to a young man named Mukhtar al-Khanshali, who's a Yemeni-American coffee entrepreneur. And we were just talking, and he said, "Oh, I was just in Yemen," and he was telling me how he had to get out of the country when the war started. And I was like, "Oh, well, I was just in Yemen too." And so we kind of started talking about Yemen. And then a year after that, a famous American author named Dave Eggers had written a book about him and about the history of coffee and coffee entrepreneurship and how coffee originated from Yemen. And they were doing a book tour, and part of their tour, they came through Chicago, where I live. And so I told my husband, let's go to this book tour. I met this guy, Mukhtar, who's the subject of the book. So we went, and it was in this downtown, very posh hotel or building, and all of these older white American people came to this book tour to listen to Dave Eggers and Mukhtar. And they had a slideshow, and they were showing the Yemen on the map and the history of Yemen, and talking about the Yemen war. And I was like, wow, how powerful is storytelling? I bet if these people never read this book or never knew of Dave Eggers, they might have never even known or could identify Yemen on a map. But here they are listening to Yemen, the story of coffee, the history of Yemen, the Yemeni crisis. And I thought, okay, maybe if I write a book about Syria, then, people can identify Syria on a map. We can humanize the Syrian refugee story. And maybe that will, cause just just
Yeah.
put it back on the map, and just trying to, the ultimate goal is to help these people get back home. Really, the ultimate goal is to find some political resolution to let these people go back home.
And either you're a storyteller or you're not. So how were you as
Yeah.
a child? Were you a storyteller? Or you love
No,
stories or
I used to read a lot. I read a lot, and even as a little kid, I read a lot. But it's funny that you say that, because I'm pretty quiet, and I hadn't told my parents I was writing this book. I mean, I was working on it for 3 or 4 years, and I just sent them the link after it was published, and I said they weren't in Chicago at the time, and I said I wrote this book, and then my mom texts me back like, "You don't even talk. How could you write a book?" So
that's
it's
why
just
you wrote
so
a book,
funny. Yeah. So I
There was
don't.
so
I'm
much
not.
there going on, and there was so much inside that it has to find an outlet to go. And I saw you, like, as a
Exactly.
doctor, you really remembered all the people you met in the camps. You remember their stories, you remember their names, their problems. So I see, like, there's that deep rooted empathy, but you are a storyteller. Like, the stories survived with you, and now they're out in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to forget. Those are things that are really hard to forget. That the
And I was like, I
experiences
have to
these
ask you
people.
this question. So, were you writing a diary at that hour or time? There was something. How did
I
that?
mean, I would blog here and there.
Okay.
So I would blog here and there just to highlight the stories. I mean, I didn't think I was going to write a book. There's no way.
Yeah.
I didn't think when I was traveling that I was going to write a book, but I would
Yeah.
blog, and I
Yeah.
thought, okay, maybe I could write a couple of essays. But then when I sat down to write, I look back at a lot of my notes and stuff
Yeah.
that I had written in the moment.
And you know what? Another interesting thing that I found in you was like that deep empathy was rooted since the beginning as a student, or you saw people and you saw their sufferings, and you were connecting at a very deeper level with people. And somehow I think that connection and all the stories stayed there. And then I felt like that is the motivation that lets you do all the things that you do. Like, I cannot imagine myself being a mom, like, the whole day, if I just pass the day with all my tasks done and the food is cooked and my child is, I have only one. If he's like okay, fed, and not complaining, I feel like, wow, I had a great day. But like, as you have a job as a doctor, and then sometimes you have night calls out, and then you have children and different, they are into different activities, and apart from it, you find time for your passion. You really want to go out and help people.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
what is the
That's been.
motivation behind what is?
I mean, I feel so responsible. Like, I've been given so much. Like, how can you not share that? Like, the education that I've got, that I feel so responsible to share that. And just, I just live in so much like blessing and security. And so it wasn't like I planned it out that
No,
way.
no, no, no.
Even if you read the book, like, the first trip was so impromptu, and then yeah, it just, I imagine myself there sometimes, and I imagine, like, what would it be like for me to take care of 3 or 4 little kids in a refugee camp, or have a baby in a refugee camp, or have to decide if I'm going to put my family in a rubber dinghy and cross the sea. So for me, it's like that. It's like, if the situation were reversed, I would hope somebody would come help me.
Yeah, definitely. And I had like, when I was reading through your book, I don't know which page it was, but it was like about the secondary trauma that all the doctors or caregivers or people who closely observe people, who are coming from that tragedy and those war areas. And when you see them, and then when you came back to States, you said it wasn't the same ever again. Like,
Mhm.
everything looks so like frivolous when people were discussing some small little day-to-day issues, or they were complaining about,
Mhm.
and you felt like you couldn't connect with them, right, at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thankfully that fades. I mean, that doesn't, you don't stay like that for a lot, forever. But
Yeah.
in the very beginning, you feel like it's just like an existential crisis. Like, what am I doing here? Who cares what color the wall is, or like
Yeah.
what color this carpet is? You know what I'm saying? Or like, does my sweater match my skirt? Like, who
Yeah.
cares? Like, these things seem so,
Yeah,
like you said,
trivial.
it's
And yeah,
frivolous. but thankfully, you don't stay in that condition for forever. Um, it is traumatic. I think it's, and I think a lot of people don't recognize that there's trauma in being in these places. Hearing people's stories, but there's also trauma coming back to your seemingly normal Hashi life.
Yeah, it's like you take something with you of it, and then
Yeah.
something stays with you. And I think that's also comes from the empathy that you have inside you, like you can relate with those people with their pain. And then I think that's flowing out, in the form of book, and like we are here talking and discussing, and the main idea is, to highlight that, okay, to be grateful for what we have and how we can help others. Like it's not their problem alone.
Yeah, it shouldn't
Like
be,
you should not leave them alone with their problem. Okay, when they will have a situation or solution, they would. But what can we do as people, or like I always think as an ecosystem of the world
Mhm.
and everyone living together. So if I have something, and if somebody doesn't have, how I can help, how I can be useful.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of avenues one can be useful. If your local city has a refugee agency, you can volunteer there. You can adopt a refugee family. Helping somebody acclimate to your country, to your new city is very rewarding. Just imagine yourself going to another country where you don't speak the language. Wouldn't you want someone to help you, like, figure out the transit system, the grocery shops, the how to get a driver's license, how to answer your mail, all of those little things that, are so different in every country. And then on top of it, it's a new language. On top of it, you're trying to help your children acclimate. So just befriending a refugee family, visiting them maybe once a week, asking them what they need help with, donating to medical NGOs on the ground, which I forgot to mention that part of proceeds from the book will go to support Med Global, which is a medical NGO, international NGO that's been working in Syria, in Turkey. Um, Also, I think a big thing is to advocate. So whether you're talking amongst your friends and neighbors, or even writing your politicians and asking for more support for refugees, opening borders, helping them find jobs, and seeing their potential as opposed to seeing them as a burden.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing, like, I want to say, like, thank you for writing this, because we always listen to the news and the media, but
Mhm,
you cannot really trust what you're reading or what they're
mhm.
writing is true. So for us, it, like for me, it was a war ongoing in Syria, and there is a refugee crisis, and people are arriving, but you don't really know what was happening to the people, or what happened in the war, or what was. And then it's like a first, I would say, where people are telling you their stories. So I felt like that's more trustable, more, like where you can really understand that what happened to the people, where it's like first hand experience of people, and instead of just reading something on the news. So thank you
Yeah.
for writing that book and, documenting that. And you never know how your book can be, in the future, where people would actually be looking for authentic sources,
Mhm.
from reading about the experience of people, from the doctors and the caregivers or whoever reached them first. And do you have a message that you wanted to give through this book?
Yeah, the big message is give refugees a chance. I think that if you watch the news in 2016 or 2015, where there's thousands of people walking across Europe and borders were closing, um, and all of this anti-refugee sentiment, it's just like, why is there so much hate against people who are just trying to survive, who are just trying to live, who are just trying to protect their families? They're not trying to invade your space. They're not trying to steal your jobs. They're just looking for security. And you would do the same thing if you were in that position. If barrel bombs were, raining down on your city, and you were watching buildings crumble, and chemical weapons were sprayed in your face and you couldn't breathe, like, you would do the same thing. So stop the hate and just, open up the borders, look at see them as their potential, and just, they want to go home too,
Yeah,
so
like to see
looking
them
for
as a
political
equal
resolution.
human being who have as much rights to live and be happy as someone else, in some other part of the world. And do you think
Yeah.
you will write another book?
I don't think so.
No.
I didn't even think I would write this first book. So
Okay.
maybe, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. This, we just launched the book just
Yeah.
right before Ramadan, and then Ramadan came, and we just kind of took a break. And so this is really like this first month of advocating and going and talking to people
because we
about the
talked
book.
about
So
a month back, and then
yeah,
we're both and we were finally able to do it today.
yeah.
Yeah, there was this question that I already asked you, that was the book written, in blogs or diaries, because I saw like you were really taking me there, in those events and situations, and there was like deep connect I found everywhere. So I really see you as a storyteller, and inshallah, it's one of the many books that you're going to write. And like, I also want to talk about the title of the book, which is so important. Just one, that why did you choose this title?
Yeah, so you'll have to read till the end to see. But I just want people to see their own potential too. Like, people think like, oh, I'm just one person, I can't change anything. But that's not really true. You're one person can do a lot in the life of, in touching other lives, or touching even the life of one other person. I mean, that's a big deal. If you change the trajectory of the life of one person, that's a big deal. So I want people to see their own potential, and not to, minimize what they can do or what they can contribute.
So I'm loving your book so far as much. I'm like more than halfway through, still yet to finish, and inshallah I'll post up a review as well. And thank you so much, Noor, and I really wish that we have many more doctors like you who have this deep connection with the human life and people, and who see everyone as equal, and like, the reason behind advocating is also like, everyone has this right to equality, and it's human life which should be valued, and we have to share all the resources that we have on the earth. And thank you so much, and I wish you great success with this book, and may you write many, many books.
Okay. So here's the book. This is a UNHCR image, a UNHCR photo. I looked through thousands of photos to get this one, and I just liked it so much because it seems hopeful and defiant. Here's this little girl going to school in a refugee camp, despite the fact that she's a refugee. So I really loved this image.
It is. And where is the book available to buy from?
So you can buy it off of Amazon, or you could buy it directly through my website, nourakhras.com. Those are the two places. And Barnes & Noble also carries it.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a bookstore in Europe, but in the United States, it's a bookstore.
Barnes & Noble, I haven't seen it here in Belgium, but
no, I don't think so. Yeah. Do you guys have Amazon?
Amazon, yes.
Okay, yeah.
So that's where I think people can find your book.
And thank you.
Let's stay connected as well.
Thank you so much, Sana.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.